tonight. It's a Friday evening, you must have some programs other than this, but you decided to come here and spend the evening with us. So I would like to really thank you from the depth of our heart. We have a nice program planned for you. Mr. Hamza, who is MC tonight, is going to go over the program. But I hope that you will enjoy the program, and most importantly, you will enjoy the food. So again, thank you all for coming.
I should be done.
Ladies and gentlemen, in a minute here we're going to have the azan or the call to prayer by our brother Arthur, and when that starts you can start eating by drinking your water or eating your date, and after that at about 8:32, 8:33 we'll get up and go together to the mosque to observe the Maghrib prayer. If you have any questions you can ask any of the volunteers.
Yeah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening. Hope you all are enjoying your food. My name is Hamza Masood. I'll be your host for this evening. And today I just wanted to thank you all for coming firstly. And hopefully the Chinese food is as good as you imagined. Basically, the purpose of the event tonight is just to create a better understanding with people of different faiths, backgrounds, religions, races, and sometimes in Islam, or as we see on the media, people have hijacked it and portray it differently than it actually is. And so with events like this, we would like to show you what the true Islam is by having dialogue, dinners, interactions, and ICO believes in ICO believes in coexistence among religions, and to achieve this goal, we invite you here tonight. And also, there's another effort going on in this community, led by two of the gentlemen in this room, Brother Josh, sitting in the black over there, black shirt, and Brother Arthur in the dapper coat right here. They do a Wednesday class, free coffee, keyword free coffee, where they just talk about Islam, questions, any questions you have, and keyword coffee. Free coffee. And also we invited you in a special month, Ramadan. As you see that if you fasted with us today, we broke our fast with a date or a samosa or a roll. And Ramadan in Islam basically is, the whole month is to achieve piety, self-control, and to feel for the poor. It's like a jump start for our year. We have the whole year where we're trying to charge up for like a spiritual battery. Like when you take your car to fill up the gas in the tank, you need it to go from destination point A to point B. That's how Ramadan is. We need to go from this Ramadan to next Ramadan. So we charge up that tank and try to push through. And with that, I'd like to start our event. And as a part of our Islamic tradition and culture, we begin gatherings with the recitation of the Holy Book, the Quran. And tonight we have a special reciter here. His name is Zahid. He's an active member of ICO who helps out in different events and community service. And he's a student at UCF studying pre-medical. And also, he has memorized the Holy Book, the Quran, which we call Hafiz in Arabic. So without further ado, Brother Zahid.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome. I'm just going to recite a very important verse of the Quran. It's the most important verse. It's called Ayatul Kursi. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم صدق الله العظيم. Now I'm just going to read the translation for everyone. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Allah, there is no God but He, the living, the self-subsisting, the eternal. No slumber can seize Him, nor sleep. All things in heaven and earth are His. Who could intercede in His presence without His permission? He knows what appears in front of and behind His creatures, nor can they encompass any knowledge of Him except what He wills. His throne extends over the heavens and the earth, and He feels no fatigue in guarding and preserving them, for He is the highest and the most exalted. Allah the Most High speaks the truth. Thank you.
As you know, we're going to have a few speakers tonight, and I'd like to introduce the first one. Originally from San Diego, California, was raised in the Episcopal Church, graduate of the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina, and also served as an officer in the U.S. Marine Corps for 4 years. He embraced Islam in 1992 and has traveled around the world, also has lived in Kuwait, and is a father of 5 children. Brother Rob Squires.
Assalamu alaikum. I greet you all in the name of peace. Thank you all for coming. As a Muslim, or as Muslims in general, we're always very happy to get a chance to explain our faith from our point of view, the way we understand it, especially when there's so much negative coverage out there in the media these days, unfortunately. So I just want to take a few minutes to explain Islam from a Muslim perspective. A couple of the follow-on speakers will go more into the fasting aspect, although I'll touch on it a bit. Muslims consider themselves a final revelation, or final manifestation, I should say, of Abrahamic monotheism. The same family of religions as Judaism and Christianity, who hold the prophet Abraham, the father of Ishmael and Isaac, in high honor as a prophet who submitted himself completely to God when the command came, prophet Abraham. And even in the Bible, it's mentioned about the Ishmaelites, who were the ancestors of Ishmael, the son of Abraham. Now, at the time of Prophet Muhammad, who is our prophet, they knew this, and even people around the Middle East knew this. Called them the Ishmaelites, the descendants of Ishmael. But they were an Ummi nation, meaning an unlettered nation. They had never had any prophets. They were idol worshippers. And Prophet Muhammad came, according to our belief, and brought them into the fold of Abrahamic monotheism. Because that monotheism, the legacy of Abraham, was known at Mecca, the city where Muslims still to this day go on pilgrimage, was still known at that time, but it was corrupted. The complete religion of Abraham had been corrupted in so many ways, even though the Arabs there knew they came from Ishmael and they had heard of Abraham, they had pretty much lost touch with the true, the pure monotheistic roots. So as Muslims, there's a very interesting parable in the Bible, in the New Testament, where Jesus talks about the rejected cornerstone. Because Muslims, today, in the world today, and even in more history in the past, Islam has kind of always been the red-headed stepchild, I'll say, of the Abrahamic faith. You have the, people speak of the Judeo-Christian religion, they'll tie themselves together, but Islam is quite often left out. So it's one very nice events like Interfaith Dialogues to kind of bring the three together. But Muslims see themselves and the faith of Islam in general as being that rejected cornerstone that when Prophet Muhammad came, the whole Ishmael side of Abrahamic monotheism had kind of been forgotten. But he came and put that stone back in place, or put it in place and finalized, brought it full circle and brought it back to the original home of Abraham. That's how we view ourselves. And as far as our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, we see him, because a lot of people will often ask, is he like Jesus, or is he like Moses, or how do we view him? And we view him strictly as a prophet, not divine in any way, but most importantly, we view him, and especially from a biblical perspective, as a prophet like unto Moses. We firmly believe that he was a fulfillment of that prophecy in the Torah, because he was a law-giving prophet that came back and established a law and the way to the one true God, in a way very similar to Moses. And even you can see the immigration he had to do, just how Moses had to flee with his people from Pharaoh, when Pharaoh was trying to exterminate them for the Jewish people. Prophet Muhammad had to do the same thing when he immigrated from Mecca to Medina to save his followers. And likewise with Moses, when he went up on the mountain to fast, when he went up on Mount Sinai to get the commandments from God, he was up there for 40 days and 40 nights. Traditional Jewish belief held that he completely abstained from, at least some of the rabbis say that, completely abstained from food and drink during that time. So he fasted. And likewise, carrying on that tradition was Jesus, peace be upon him, who we also believe is a prophet. When very early in his ministry, or one might say just before his ministry started, he went out to the wilderness and fasted for 40 days and 40 nights in a way very similar to Moses. And the traditional Christian belief is when Jesus was out in the wilderness, he completely abstained from food and water that entire time. And one note I'd like to make is, sometimes Muslims' beliefs come up, or if one were to read criticisms of Islam or watch them on YouTube, they would accuse our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, of borrowing. We don't see it that way. We see it as him receiving revelation from God and him continuing in that line of prophets who came before him. So likewise with Jesus, who took the same 40 days and went out to the wilderness and fast in imitation of Moses. Even most biblical commentators will say that's what he was doing. He was following on, making a connection with Moses there. I don't think very many people would say, oh, he borrowed from him. He stole that idea from Moses. No, he was carrying on a prophetic tradition, which is the same way we view Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But as far as fasting, there is an interesting example where he did borrow, but he admitted it. The Jewish festival of Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, essentially celebrating the Jewish people being saved, and they fast that day. It's actually the only day that the Torah legislates as them being required to fast, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. When Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was alive in the city of Medina, which had a lot of Jewish tribes, he found out they were fasting, and he asked, why are they fasting? And he was told that it was in honor of Prophet Moses, and the fast he did to honor the saving of the children of Israel. And he said, well, we have just as much right to that, because Moses is our prophet too, so he fasted. And in Islam, that day is called Ashura, which means the 10th day of the first month of the year. Has a different name in Hebrew. But in that case, and this was actually before Ramadan was revealed, that the requirement. But he was making that connection, saying, no, just to honor your prophet, we're going to fast as well. So there is that connection there, and he made that very clear. The words that are used in fasting, it's quite interesting to me when you compare Hebrew words in the Old Testament to Arabic words, because they're both Semitic languages. And it's almost an exactly identical word, som, which is in Arabic means fasting, and in Hebrew, som, I think the S is a little heavier, but it's the same. It's to abstain from eating and drinking, or to withhold is really the base meaning. In another language that it's also uses that exact same word is Aramaic. And does anybody know why that's an important language? Because that's a language Jesus spoke, exactly. Also a Semitic language. If you line up translations and compare the three between Arabic, Aramaic, and Hebrew, lots of times they're almost closely identical. I remember watching the movie, the one by Mel Gibson, The Last Temptation of Christ. The Passion of Christ, thank you. Last Temptation of Christ, I'm showing my age there. Like in the 80s. But some of the phrases they would speak sounded just like Arabic. It was amazing. But one key thing is also here, my effort to counter negative things that are sometimes said in the media, is that it's a different God, a law. Muslims prefer to use that word a lot, but saying God is fine. But the Aramaic word that Jesus used is actually Allah, just like, very similar to the word Allah that is used in Arabic. So it's not a different God. Are there theological differences? Well, there's theological differences within Islam. There are theological differences within Judaism and between Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. But we agree on most of the big things, and the God is the same. Whether we have some minor differences is the type of thing we can discuss in a civil manner for the sake of understanding each other. One final thing, this thought came to me Wednesday night. We had another interfaith dialogue. There was a nice minister here, Church of Christ minister, United Church of Christ minister, he corrected me. And he was talking about using storytelling for interfaith dialogue and folk tales and that type of thing, which I thought was very interesting. And it brought to mind just an amazing, what I find to be an amazing play that was written in the 1700s. by a Jewish philosopher named Lessing. I'm sorry, he wasn't a philosopher, he was a writer, but he was friends with the great Jewish Enlightenment philosopher Moses Mendelssohn. He wrote a play called Nathan the Wise. And the play was set in Saladin, the great Muslim warrior who defeated the Crusaders. The play's set in his time and place in Jerusalem. And the main character is a rabbi named Nathan the Wise. And he gets into some trouble somehow. I think there was a kind of Muslim guy who doesn't like him so much, and somehow gets him up in front of Saladin, and Saladin asks him, "So why aren't you a Muslim? You're still a Jew. We're here in a Muslim country. What's wrong with you? You think your religion is better than ours?" And he said, "No." So he off the top of his head, in the play, he said, "Let me tell you this story. There was a man once, and he received this ring passed to him by his father, that whoever has this ring is going to be a righteous, God-fearing, pious man. And each father who gets that ring has to pass it on to his son, his son that he loves the most." And this happened generation after generation, and the ring worked. But finally it came to this one father. He had 3 sons, and he loved them all equally. So he didn't know what to do. But he had this amazing ring. So he went to the jeweler and got 2 identical copies made. Even he couldn't tell them apart. And he gave each one of those to his sons. And they each thought they had the real ring. And the analogy here is obvious, I hope, that it's like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. We all want to believe that we're the most beloved son and that we're the most righteous and pious. But actually, I might have gotten that wrong. I think he didn't tell them which one of them had it. So they each had a ring, but nobody was sure who had the real one. So the challenge there was, live up to the ring. Be a God-fearing, righteous person. Live a good life, and try to live up to that ring to prove that you're the one that's got it. So this is Nathan the Wise, the rabbi, standing there, Saladin. So this was his story he told, saying, "See, no, I don't think I'm better than you. I'm just doing my best to live up to the ring, and you're doing your best to live up to it." And that's what we all, different faiths, need to do, is try to live up to think we're the one that have it while respecting the other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Rob. I have a question for you guys. How many of you fasted with us today? Or attempted? There we go, a couple, thank you. So, what happens in Ramadan is usually we have these cravings, which is kind of human nature, but like, anybody have a special food that you crave when you haven't eaten all day?
I was just thinking of
Pizza? I went to Publix, I think a few days ago with my sister, and we went to the dessert aisle. And instead of just getting one thing, just because we were fasting, the cravings hit, and we got like 5 different things, like some cakes, some cannoli, and just a bunch of things. And that's pretty much what happens sometimes. And also I saw a dish on your plate called samosa. I don't know if you guys are familiar, it's pretty much the greatest thing South Asians have created. It has either beef, potatoes, and you can use it with either sriracha sauce, ketchup, mustard, you name it. It's pretty much heaven in the mouth for me, personally. But getting back on topic, I'd like to bring up our next speaker, Brother Joshua Will. He is a revert back to Islam in 2011. Since then, he has been greatly involved in our community as a member assisting in community service activities and spreading Islam. He also co-hosts a da'wah class with Brother Arthur, which I mentioned at the beginning of the program on Wednesdays, over a cup of coffee. As well as that, aside from his community work, he teaches math and science at the Orange Youth Academy, a proud father of 2 of the cutest babies I've seen in Orlando, as you can see over there, baby David on the screen. Without further ado, Brother Joshua Will.
Thank you, Hamza. Although I have to say, I think much less of you now that I know you put ketchup on your samosas. Alright, so Ramadan is a pretty busy time for us. You start to see the schedule, if you're talking to some people here and, you do the math and you're like, oh, so you get up at like 4 in the morning to start eating and you have this really long day of fasting, and you don't break it till 8:30, then you stay late for these prayers and you don't leave till like 12:30 and so these long days, really busy, a lot of stuff going on. And what you're about to see is that we really didn't do a good job of going over our presentations with each other because we're in the middle of Ramadan with all these things going on. So there's going to be a little overlap here. But what I want to talk about is the importance of Ramadan in the lives of the prophets. Okay, so we're not going to look at the importance of Ramadan in Islam. I think most people get that this is a big deal for us. This is a huge month. And this is, for some of us, when you really dig in, it's the most amazing month of the year. But if you're not a Muslim, what does it mean? So we're going to look at the importance of Ramadan in the lives of other prophets, other figures, key figures in the Abrahamic faith that you might be more familiar with. Presentation. So to begin, let's talk a little bit about what Ramadan is. So Ramadan is a holy month, right? And kind of basic gist of it, not going too deep into the Quran or theology behind it. It's an extended period of fasting designed to purify and strengthen us spiritually. Now, at the end of Ramadan, we have a stretch of 10 days, which are considered, or I should say 10 nights, which are considered the 10 holiest nights of the year, most powerful nights for prayer and worship. And at the very end, we conclude Ramadan with a day of feasting and celebration with family and community on what is one of our 2 most holy days of the year, Eid al-Fitr. Now, there are other kind of stories from the messages of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and from the Quran that tell us more about Ramadan. And we know that one of the reasons Ramadan is so powerful is because it's the month when the gates of hell are locked and the gates of heaven are wide open. Right? So all of the devils have been chained up. So the devils that are coming around and whispering in your ear and, telling you, eat another one, or, go, they do all the things afterwards, and you're like, I should have done that, what was I thinking? They're gone. You're free from their influence for a month. So it makes it easier, and it must be, I have been out here at the mosque over the last 9 days. Not to say that I don't come to the mosque every day, but I live about 30 minutes away from here. So it's not a daily drive for me. I do most of my prayer at home. I try to come out here about 2 to 3 times a week. And I have been out here every night for the last week. And you cannot at other times of the year. I can't talk myself into driving out late at night to drive back home again. It's easier to make that choice this month. Just is. And as a result, all of our blessings and rewards are multiplied. So we're told by God that everything good that we do this month, even though it's easier for us to do it, if we do it, all of the blessings and rewards are multiplied. So this is Ramadan. From the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, the 2nd chapter or book of the Quran, verse 183, O you who have believed, decreed upon you is fasting, as it was decreed upon those before you, that you may become righteous. So the Quran for us is not the message of it's the message of the Prophet Muhammad, it's not the words of the Prophet Muhammad. They are the words of God, as revealed to him by the angel Gabriel, as revealed to the Prophet Muhammad by the angel Gabriel, to be delivered to us, the people. And in it we see where God is telling us it has been revealed to the other prophets before, it is being revealed to this prophet now, that fasting is important. And Brother Robert did a very good job of mentioning some of the other prophets, and I'm going to kind of go over them again real quick. And what we see, and what I always feel is important to remember, is that if you believe there is one God, then regardless of how you identify yourself, or what faith you're in, or what you call him, then we're all praying to the same Creator. Right? Regardless of our opinions of it, we were all created by the same Creator. right? There aren't multiple gods, and then there's one God that made all the Hindus, and one God that made all the Christians, and one God that made all the Jews. It'd be really confusing when people converted if that was the case. Right? There's one God, and we all talk to him a little differently. And what we get to see from that verse is that he's been saying the same thing. His message is consistent. The all-powerful being who created all of existence hasn't had a need to change his message. And what he was telling Adam, and what he was telling Abraham, and what he was telling Moses, and what he was telling Jesus, and what he told Muhammad were all very, very similar. And in some cases, the same thing. And when we look back at their lives, what we know about their lives, we see that, one, the Torah was revealed to the prophet Moses during the month of Ramadan. And we know this, in Hebrew they have the exact date for when the Torah was revealed, and you can follow that back on the Hebrew calendars. Lunar cycles are the same moon for the Hebrew calendar and the Muslim calendar, and you can track the months back. And the Torah was revealed during the month of Ramadan. And here in Exodus, chapter 34, verse 28, Moses was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights without eating bread or drinking water. And he wrote on the tablets the word of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. So, receiving the covenant, receiving these words of God during Ramadan, and what was he doing? Fasting. The prophet David, peace and blessings upon him, received the Psalms, or the Zabur, during the month of Ramadan. In the second book of Samuel, chapter 12, verse 16, we see that David pleaded with God for the child, so he fasted and spent the nights lying in sackcloth on the ground. And that tradition that Brother Rob talked about and that I'm talking about now, the prophets before Muhammad, those who had intimate knowledge of the best way to worship God, they all did it nearly identically. Because they all knew the best way to worship God. And what they did, when it really mattered, when they really needed to be close and strengthen that, is they fasted. Prophet Jesus. So the Injil was revealed to the prophet Jesus. And I teetered, I think I wrote the Bible and deleted it, or the New Testament deleted it a couple times. And we know that the New Testament's a collection of Gospels from a series of people from the time of Jesus and the time after Jesus. So in Islam, we refer to it as the Injil, is the book that was delivered, the actual message delivered from God, is what we're talking about. And we know that that also was delivered during the month of Ramadan. And in fact, we learn in Islam that all of the revelations, that for any of the prophets who received revelation like that, they all came during the holy month of Ramadan. That is the month when God gives message to his Rasuls. And so, can you go back one? Okay. From the Bible, Matthew chapter 4, verse 2. But he fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and afterward he was hungry. And this was in reference to Jesus and the period that Brother Robert had mentioned earlier. And now we get to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him. And we know in Islam very well, extremely well documented, that the Quran was revealed during the month of Ramadan. And now, Ramadan is obviously probably has the most important, the most things that we know, important events and things that happened for the Prophet Muhammad of any of the prophets. Right? And one of the key ones is that he led the Muslims into and won the Battle of Badr during the month of Ramadan, which was an important battle because they were outnumbered 3-1. And think about what I'm saying, right? They went to battle during the month of Ramadan. So all the things I said when we started, getting up super early, right? Being on little to no sleep, not being able to eat food, drink water for the extended period. We know where they were, right? We know they were out in the desert. We know what part of the world they were in. Right? There was no central air. They weren't, hiding out. Like, I'm hiding out in here where it's cool all day. I'm not staying out in the sun. And so this was a miraculous battle, to say the least, because outnumbered 3-1 and fasting. And God assured them victory. We see other prophets had very important things that happened during the month of Ramadan. There were a number of prophets who the angel of death was sent for them, and they were brought home to God during the month of Ramadan. Two of the most notable being the prophets Zechariah and Yahya, or John the Baptist. And in fact, we learn in Islam that the day Jesus received his first revelation was the same day that Zechariah and John the Baptist died, which places their deaths during Ramadan as well as his first revelation. And another prophet, Elijah, peace be upon him, we also have record in the Bible that he completed a 40-day fast. And in the first book of Kings 19:8, it says, "So he arose and ate and drank, and went in the strength of that food for 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God." So another prophet with that knowledge of how to please and worship God, and this is how he did it. So, now, what I want to do here, and I like, as Brother Rob also mentioned, about telling the story. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at a little triangulation. And this is kind of what I've been up to for the last couple of days and whatever few minutes of spare time I've had. And we're going to look for the truth of the matter. So, whenever you're investigating or you're looking at kind of multiple perspectives or stories, what I find as a teacher is the truth is always somewhere in between. If I have an incident between 3 students and I ask them all what happened, they'll tell me different things, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. I know, we have a police officer here tonight. If you're investigating a crime, right, and you interview the first witness, and they tell you what happened, you're just like, that's it? No, we know what happened. We're good. No. You gotta ask more people. You talk, you get different stories, and you look for the truth. And so, one of the things, and I've done this a couple times before, and I really enjoyed it, is, when you look at, we're gonna look at Easter. And Easter's a great example, because Easter has these traditions that come from all different places. Right? And when we think of the holiday Easter, right, we think, it's a Christian holiday based around the resurrection of Christ. But the name Easter, right, the name Easter doesn't come from anywhere. And in fact, if we were to interview, and what we're going to do is, we're going to think of, the pagans, we'll get their story, we're going to talk to the Jews, get their story, we'll talk to the Christians, to get their story. And we're going to try to triangulate a little and see what's in the middle. Right? So you ask the pagans about Easter. The pagans say, well, Easter was co-opted from us. It was a pagan holiday. You're like, well, how is that? The pagans don't worship the resurrection of Christ. And they say, no, but Easter was the name of the spring fertility goddess. That's her name. Easter isn't a Greek word. It's not an Aramaic word. Right? Easter was the name of the spring pagan fertility goddess. Right? Being a fertility goddess, they celebrated her with brightly colored eggs. And her spirit animal was a bunny rabbit. Kind of makes sense there. And so you hear this story, and you're like, okay, so here's some of Easter. This is the pagan story. And then you go talk to the Jews. And they say, well, Easter's just, what the Christians do during Passover. Well, how are they linked to Passover? I mean, the Jews, they're not celebrating the resurrection of Christ, are you? No. But we've had Passover for years. We've had Passover for, much longer. Well, why are they linked then? Like, why do they have to be linked? Well, that's when Easter's arrives. The Christians use Passover to determine which week Easter's in. That's why, Christmas is on December 25th every year, but Easter isn't on the same day every year. Kind of floats through spring a little, following the Jewish solar calendar, moves back a couple times, then comes back forward. Stays within about a month of itself, but always in spring, like the pagans, and always following that Passover. So, well, what's this Passover then that's related to? Well, it's one of the 2 most holiest days of the year. Right? It's a day of feasting. It's a day there's feasting. There's a celebration with the community. Right? One of the most holiest days of the year, and this is what we've been worshiping for 1,000 years. That at this time of year, this is what we do. Okay. So then you go to the Christians. Now you're getting more into the essence of it. And the Christians go, well, it's more than, it's not Passover. It's not the pagan fertility celebration, right? There's so much more to Easter than just that one day. There's 40 days before it, right? It's a whole period called Lent, and we have all these other days in between. We have, Ash Wednesday, we have Good Friday, we have Palm Sunday, right? There's so much into it, At the end of those 40 days, the last stretch is called Holy Week. That's the holiest time of the year for us. And we have this, it's this deep spiritual celebration where, during Lent you're giving something up and you're abstaining to try to purify yourself and to try to strengthen your piety and your faith. And then at the end, after, you have a big day of feasting and celebration with community. And so you get all these stories, right, looking around Easter from all these different people, from the pagans, from the Jews and the Christians, and you try to figure out what's in the middle, what do we have? Right? Well, it sounds like, we have this stretch, this long stretch of 40 days where you're abstaining or giving something up. And at the end of it, right, the last stretch, the holiest time of the year, where it's even more powerful and even more important. Right? And when that's done, we have one of the two most holy days of the year, a huge holiday of celebration with feasting and the importance of family and community and worshiping God. And when we find that truth in the middle of all the different stories that we just talked about and all the different places Easter comes from, it sounds a little bit like something else we're talking about tonight. It sounds a little bit like the way we describe Ramadan. And to me, I find that when there's one God that we're all worshiping, and He's had multiple messages. And they've been telling us their stories for a long time. And some of them sound a little different today. But when you look in the middle, right, instead of just focusing and be like, no, this one's in April, that one's in June. Or no, this one's 40 days, that one's 30 days. But when you look for what they have in common, and you know that each of them were based on the teachings of some of the most pious and powerful men, some of the greatest worshipers of our Creator that this planet has ever seen, then we're going to see something in common. And sometimes we see a lot in common. So, one more slide. While I was doing all this triangulation, I kind of had to do some with some of these dates, and I mentioned that the four holy books, the Torah, the Zabur, the Injil, and the Quran were all revealed during the month of Ramadan. And, I couldn't find anything like this on the internet. I wanted to get the dates. And if you just look at one faith, if you just look at the Hebrew calendar, you can't get dates for. They give you the date for the Torah and that's it. And if you look at the Christian research, they give a rough date for the Bible, but they don't have good for other ones. But when you start taking into account the dates and the things that the researchers have really found from each, and I look a little bit from here, and I say, all right, in Islam, I know this happened during the month of Ramadan. And I know that it's this many years from the last one. And I can find when the month of Ramadan would have been those. That if you actually take into account what each faith has, you can put them all together. And these are, a little rough, because, I just did this. Nothing great. But you can see a nice outline of when these revelations occurred throughout time. And it's only possible if you take into account the histories, the traditions, and the stories from each of the faiths. Because we don't have enough detailed record from any one to actually do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Josh. Next we have Brother Arthur Richards. He's a convert to Islam and an active member of the Orlando community. He works with ICNA Relief, the largest Muslim social services organization in America, as a regional director, and he's also a public speaker, and he also sits on the Interfaith Council of Central Florida and a chair for the Impact Homelessness Committee in Orlando. He aims to teach people the beauty of literature as a professor in the university setting, and to teach the beauty of Islam to Muslim youth. Without further ado, Brother Arthur Richards.
Okay, so I'm a lot louder than the rest, so that's one thing, so be prepared for my boisterous voice. And of course, it's customary that within the Islamic tradition, when we begin, when we speak, we say, Assalamu alaikum, may God's peace and blessings be upon all of you. So, Assalamu alaikum. You can just say it in English, may God bless you too. That's all good. So I'm going to give you guys a little presentation on what Ramadan specifically within the Islamic tradition is about for us as Muslims, for us as individuals that testify and believe in God, obviously, and that the last and final prophet of God was by the name of Muhammad. So, first slide if you would. Thank you so very much. So, why do we fast? Typically, when I ask a child this question, right? I'm not going to spend the time and ask kids right now in the room, right? Even though there's some really cute ones in the back right now. If I were to ask, why do we fast? A lot of times you hear, well, it's one of the ways that we can feel what hunger feels like, right? It's how we can kind of have an understanding of what those children in Africa feel, because apparently only children in Africa are hungry, right? Or you get the answer, well, you know, this is a great way to feel what it means like to be poor, right? You know, I don't have enough money to even be able to go out and to purchase food if I wanted to, right? But when it comes to the Quran itself, right, which we believe is Kalamullah in English, being the Word of God, right? When it comes to that book, God literally says in His words, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. He says, O you who believe, we have enjoined on you, we have made it obligatory on you, like we made it obligatory on all of those that came before you. Right? We made this whole thing that we call fasting obligatory on you as we made it on those who came before you. For what purpose? Not to feel what hunger feels, because the reality is, if you ever study the life of the Prophet Muhammad, or the people that were around him, if there were anyone that had to go through starvation and hunger and poverty, it was them. So it couldn't have been for that reason, because they spent most of their life in that situation. No, God says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, which means in English, to gain piety, to gain taqwa. And so when I use the word taqwa, you guys are like, I don't know what that word means, right? So there's this famous scholar who gives an amazing example of what it means, what the word taqwa means. And so Imam Shafi'i is his name, and he says that taqwa is like a field that has thorns in it, right? And so when a person is walking through a field of thorns, you know, if I may ask the question, do you just run right through that field? She's like, heck no, right? You don't just run through that field of thorns. In fact, what you would do is you would make sure that every step you take is away from one of those thorns. And you would cautiously walk through until you get on the other side. Likewise, our lives should be based on carefully progressing through our lives and understanding that throughout our lives, God is watching over all of our actions. And we should carefully walk and traverse this world until we come out on the other side with Him. And that's exactly what taqwa is. And so Ramadan, this month of Ramadan for Muslims, is kind of like the pit stop that we've been waiting for all year. You know, the tires are going bad, the gas is running out, and we kind of need to refill, get more food, and, you know, make sure that we can continue the rest of the way. So in this month, as Josh so eloquently mentioned, there's another verse in the second chapter of the Quran. And in this chapter, Allah says, God says, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. That in the month of Ramadan, this month, was the month in which the Quran was revealed. It was sent down to us. But it was sent down for what reason? To be a guidance to mankind. So this is not a book that was just sent down for people to sit down and, you know, sound really pretty when they're reading it in the mosque or, you know, whatnot. But it was supposed to be something that told people that when you see someone that's poor, you benefit them. When you see a person that is in need of your assistance, you make sure you take the time out to help them. That's what the whole book was originally meant to come down and to benefit us with. But at times, of course, and this is something that we can all testify to, sometimes we stray away from the teachings that were originally given to us.
If I can get the next slide, please. And he's like, what? iPhone.
So in this book of God, one of the main themes to it was the purification of the heart. And for some of you guys, you know, who came before, you guys know this is like my theme. This is the thing I always talk about. And it's the purification of the heart. Why? Because that is so vital to the human being. We live in a time where, honestly, we've committed a travesty against our own souls. A travesty against our own hearts in which we really don't spend any time working on them, right? And so Ramadan is kind of what we do. We flip everything in our lives. We spend the whole year feeding our stomachs and starving our souls. And so Ramadan is a time in which we starve our stomachs and feed our souls. You know, to spend time in reflection and for it to be a wake-up call for us to reflect and to understand of the blessings and the amazing things that God has given us in our lives. So I like to try and keep it short. So that literally is all I have for you guys tonight. I have a short little Q&A for those of you who might have any questions or any thoughts that you guys might want to ask. As Josh and I always mention, everything goes, right? So there's never any questions or anything that you can't ask that you might feel uncomfortable asking or anything of that nature. If there's any place to ask that, it would be in this setting and in this gathering right now. So who wants to start us off with a question? This is like a little auction house right now, right? I'm gonna, see if I can get someone to come out here and be like, all right, give me one over here. Can I have one over here? Anyone over there? All right. So with that, if there's anyone in here in this gathering right now that might have a question, we can just start off with something, if anyone has something. Maybe any question. Any question goes. Just not like anything from like Jeopardy or like Wheel of Fortune. Like something that has to do with Islam, preferably.
Do you believe that somebody doesn't believe in Islam, they go to hell when they die?
That is a beautiful question. That's a beautiful question. Thank you for asking that. So his question was, do you believe that a person who does not believe in Islam, right, will go to hell? Right? I wanted to ask you, what is your faith background, if I may ask? Hindu. Beautiful. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for coming, first and foremost. Okay. So we have a Hindu in the building. So to answer your question, okay, we believe that when an individual, okay, says the words with the belief in their heart, La ilaha illallah wa Muhammadur Rasulullah, which translates to that there is no God worthy of worship except for the one and only God, and that his last servant and messenger was Muhammad, right? Of course, in accordance and understanding that there were other prophets that came as well, so Jesus, Moses, Adam, Noah, etc., etc., etc. Right? Now, if a person has this belief system, we say, even if they are to be in a time and place where they will end up in the place that we all don't want to go to, right? They will eventually be taken out by the mercy of God and will enter paradise, right? Now, if a person doesn't have that, okay, we say that there is a chance that they will end up there, a higher chance that they will end up there. But, I mentioned a beautiful thing to you. There is a narration of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, right? In which he mentions that there are people, for example, and I'll give you a few of them. One of them being the people that lived in between Jesus and Muhammad, right? So when Jesus was gone, and Muhammad had not yet come to this world, he was not born yet, what happened to the message, right? So there are people like that, for example. Then, there are people as well that are old in age, right? Who, as we all know, when you reach a certain age, you can't tell nobody nothing, right? We all know, right? So that is another example. In addition to that, the person who does not have the aql or the intellect to be able to understand the message that is being given to them, right? And so there are different examples of individuals that because they don't even have the ability, whether it's because of old age, whether because a prophet never came to them, or etc., did not receive the message, or even in today's age, right? If your message of the one God or the truth of God is something you're seeing from Bill O'Reilly or one of these amazing individuals on, you name it, Fox, right? Then you're probably going to get a very distorted view, right? Of not just Islam, but just the true aspect of monotheism, right? And so if that's the case, then we believe that a person will come on the Day of Judgment in front of God, and God will give them a test of their own on that time, and they will be able to enter paradise. So thank you, that's a very good question, very good question. I know, okay, go ahead.
If you're not Muslim, are we welcome anytime to you?
Girl, you can come here anytime. No, seriously though, seriously. There's actually a really cool story from the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing upon him. Once his wife, Aisha, radiallahu anha, there were some people, he used to send letters out to different people in different lands, etc. Matter of fact, the very first person that he sent Muslims to, in order to be protected, was a Christian king in Africa, right? And so he was always very much within communicating and speaking to other people, etc. And so one group came, right? A Christian group, and they were actually inside the mosque, right? They slept and they stayed inside the mosque. Not only did they sleep in there, not only did they stay their duration of the time there, but they were praying in there, right? And the companions came to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing upon him, was like, yo, you gonna let them pray here like that? Like, what's good? You know, like, they're praying to Jesus in the mosque, right? And so they were kind of like, is that allowed? And he said, leave them. Leave them. Are they harming you? So let them pray, right? And it came to the point where there was another delegation that came inside the mosque. They did more than pray. They were dancing. They were getting jiggy with it in the mosque, right? And Aisha, radiallahu anha, she wanted to see what they were doing, but she was kind of short, right? She couldn't see over the little ledge that was there. And so she actually climbed up on the back of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and he held her there so that she would be able to see what these people who were not Muslim were doing in the Muslim place of worship. So as I said, girl, you can come anytime you want to. Good question.
Is Ramadan always in the month of June?
No, because that's a good question. She said, is Ramadan always in the month of June? It's not always in the month of June because the Gregorian calendar came later, aka going by the calendar, aka the sun, right? And so we were on the lunar calendar, which many other faith traditions were upon and still are upon today, right? So we were on the lunar calendar, and so it's on a different time period, if you will. So it's going to change throughout the time. So for example, there are many people who are a little bit somewhat older than myself, right? That when they were fasting Ramadan, right, it was in the winter, right? So they always say, in America, there's always a little story of like, boy, when I was your age, I had to walk 5 miles to school and, et cetera, et cetera. Well, in the Muslim community, boy, when I was your age, I only had to fast 8 hours, right? Because the time was a little bit different. Obviously in the winter, the days are a little bit shorter, but the nights are long. And actually there's a beautiful proverb from an Arab that he used to mention, that the winter is the time of the believer, because the days are short for them to be able to fast, but they can pray all night, right? Because the night would be really long. So very good question. Very good question.
10 days every year.
Yeah, it moves, to be specific, it moves 10 days every year. Any other questions? These are like, not really like, I thought they were gonna come with the questions. There you go.
The Hebrew prophets, who are in the lineage, extending right up to Muhammad, they all kind of said they were prophets. God, has told me to tell you this. Jesus has a kind of a different approach to it, and he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the Son of God. I am all of these things. And so it's quite radically different from the other prophets, from this lineage. And so how do you kind of handle these strong statements that Jesus made and still consider him to be a prophet?
Beautiful question. And he asked that question because he's like, the top dog in the executive council of the Interfaith Council of Central Florida. So, he had to throw that at me. That's good. I appreciate it. And so to specifically answer that question, and specifically that verse actually, right? I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but through me, right? And so when we hear that verse, especially as Muslims, we actually understand and believe that verse in the sense that we understand, right, that there is no way to come to God, to understand God, to worship God, except for following Jesus. Because he was a prophet at that time, right? We believe that he was a person that was sent by God, right, to deliver that exact same message that, hey, God sent me here to bring you back to him, right? To warn you of what you guys are doing, how you're doing it wrong, right? And that you need to change your ways and come back to him, right? And so that's one of the, go ahead if you want to mention something.
It says in the Quran in various places in the Quran even, it describes the Prophet Muhammad as being the way and the light as well. Because without a prophet, without a messenger to help you learn, to show you the way, then you're in darkness. And so the prophets were considered by God to be his light, how he shared and shined his light on our souls.
But he goes on to say, me and my Father are one.
Yeah, we would say one in mission. My take on that is the Quran confirms the gospel to Jesus, the good news, which was a call to monotheism in repentance. Clearly, in Matthew, in the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, not John, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, that was there. When asked directly, "Oh dear Rabbi, how do I get to heaven? Love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." Didn't say worship me. Had his belief in him as an incarnate member of the Trinity would have been necessary for salvation. I think it would have been obligatory on him to make that clear. That's the way we look at it. The I am statements, I would, as I started off by saying, the Quran confirms the gospel, and my understanding of this is that the Christians have the gospel. It's in their books. If you add Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all the words that are in red, you might even count some of the sayings in the apocryphal gospels, some of the sayings in Thomas or whatever. But the Quran pretty much confirms that the Christians have the gospel. But I think the key point is, not everything they claim as gospel is gospel. So they have the message, but they've added to it. Quran says they write the book with their own hand and say this is from God. And the interesting thing about those I am statements is which gospel they come from. John. So you have the first three gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, which are all pretty much similar. Christology-wise, Jesus is a prophet, essentially. It's not in the latest gospel, John, that he starts flirting with, or the author of the gospel, divine status, right? So, in our, the Quran also says that the Quran is a furqan over the Torah and the gospel, meaning a criterion. So you have the gospel, the good news, worship God alone, repent, love your neighbor as yourself. And the way we distinguish what's truly in the gospel and truly not is by the message of the Quran, the pure Abrahamic monotheism. And, you know, also the whole conundrum, if he's I am, if that's a callback to the Moses I am statement on Mount Sinai, when he's saying, when he goes up into heaven and sits at the right hand of God and he prays to God, then it's more than one, etc. Right?
So obviously that's a very heavy theological question. And of course I expected that from him. So thank you, that's a good question. Can we take one last question before we go ahead and collectively close up for the night, and we have other things for you guys as well. Question? Okay, go ahead.
The Trinity. I was raised Catholic for most of my life until I was 18. And I remember distinctly, things have changed since I was a young child, but we always performed in the Father and in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And that was Roman Catholicism was the first major powerful sect out of Christianity. But when I became a Christian, they don't do the in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And that was part of the doctrine that you repeated as a Catholic. And that Catholicism came out of the Christian sect and as a very holy Roman Empire Christianity kind of thing that encompassed all Europe and everything. And that changed when Martin Luther and some other people who, you know, saw what was going on.
So your question is?
Well, the question is that Christianity, some Christian people do not believe in the Trinity. Some sects of Christianity do not believe in the Trinity, and I don't understand that.
Oh, well, I mean, you'd have to ask them. That's okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you probably have to talk to them. No, like, okay. I'm not academic in the Bible and or Christianity. Yeah. Can we get one last question? If you guys have any other questions, you guys good? All right. I think we're gonna end on that. Go ahead.
Do you have any understanding of Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, Sikhism?
Yeah, the Bhagavad Gita is still in my library.
Sorry?
No, not at all. Actually, the Bhagavad Gita is actually like sitting on my library at home, actually. The Gita?
Oh.
Yeah, actually, I keep that very close, actually, within my library. It's one of my favorites to go back to. And other scriptures. But one of the things that we would actually mention, specifically when it comes to other faiths, that I would say are outside of the Abrahamic or Judeo-Christian framework, right, is that there are many prophets and messengers that God sent to this earth. Many of them, right? And many of them were not told to us directly, right? So there are many names that we do not know, for example. So for example, when it comes to Buddha, right? When it comes to Krishna, Vishnu, etc., right? Kada, as we would say, right? These are names that we cannot innately say that they were messengers of God, but neither can we deny that they could have been messengers of God, right? So people of faith also, often will bring up such questions, and I'm glad you brought that up. We'll say, well, what about us? Right? Are you kind of casting us out and saying, well, only, since you guys believe in the Bible, you believe in the Torah, you believe in the Psalms, etc., right? But in fact, when it comes to these other faiths, there's an understanding, right, that very, very likely, right, especially when you look at many of the stories, right, that are so similar within these faiths, right, that in fact the messengers could have been from God as well, and we do not know that.
I think the Quran also mentioned the other books that were revealed, which we don't know. So they may be earlier, like Hinduism is 5,000 years or 6,000 years old.
It says that there were 144,000 messengers, prophets in all, and around, I think it's 313 that received books of Revelation.
Right.
And so we've got like 4 that we know about. So if you look at it, and what we do know in Islam is that Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the final messenger. So for most faiths, if we look at it and the time is right, it came before the Prophet Muhammad, and we know that it says in parts that God sent a messenger to every people in every land. So if it was in a place where no other messengers that we know of made it to, in a time before the Prophet Muhammad, then we're usually willing to say, like, God knows, but like there's a good chance that someone brought them, that message came from somewhere. So that they're one of the 313 or one of the 144,000.
In the Hadith, there's a narration where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught Muslims to sleep on their right side, like with their head on their hand. And a friend of mine pointed out that they saw the statue of the sleeping Buddha. I'm not sure where, China or India, where it was. And that's the way the Buddha's sleeping as well. It was very interesting. But there's a Japanese scholar, his last name is Sutsu, not Muslim, and one of my friends who's a scholar of Islam, PhD and everything, very well studied, he said, this Japanese scholar who's an expert in Zen Buddhism, he recently wrote a book, since 2008, Islam and Zen Buddhism. And my friend also said that this man's book, again, he's a Japanese scholar, Zen Buddhist, he wrote a book called God and Man in the Quran, and my friend insists this is the best book on the Quran written in English, period, Muslim or non-Muslim, by the Zen Buddhist scholar in Japan. So there's another book called The Tao of Islam, written by a Japanese woman who studied Islam in the Middle East and wrote it. It's a very insightful book about gender relationships in Islam from an Eastern perspective. I highly recommend that for anybody looking at comparative religion. I don't know that much about Eastern religions, but I found that book to be very fascinating.
That's a very good question as well. So we're gonna.
If I may, I'm from Hindu faith. I'm probably the only one here. I just brought a booklet here, which Islam believes that Islam believes God is everywhere, right?
Yeah.
God is everywhere.
So it's in his knowledge.
Sorry?
We would say he's everywhere in his knowledge,
Right.
but not in his essence.
Yeah, if he is everywhere, he was in the idols also. Right? No, God is everywhere, right?
He's transcendent above his creation.
He created everything. He is the creator of everything, but we don't say that he's in. We wouldn't say that he's in that chair,
He's
but he's
transcendent out of
responsible
creation.
for its creation.
Anyway, the point I was going to make is that all these murtis we have in the Hindu temples, they are not gods and goddesses. As Muslims feel, we believe in or we worship stones. And other Americans feel we worship millions of gods and goddesses. There's no question of billions of gods and goddesses. We believe everybody is divine. Like Jesus says, kingdom of heaven is within thee, kingdom of God is within thee. As you sow, so shall you reap. If somebody hits you on one cheek, give him the other cheek. Love thy neighbor and all the beautiful teachings. So if we all talk about the teachings, then we will all have peace in this world. But if we keep talking about the the messengers, and keep talking about the books, my book and my prophet, then you will have, you can see even in Islam, how many different sects are there. There's going to be difference of opinion. And there is this, Iran doesn't want to see Israel existing. They want to wipe it off. So we say the same, religions. So the point I was making here is that in Hinduism, these people, our Hindu people, they themselves, of course, they even don't know much of the religion, the teachings. But these murtis in the temples, if you go to the temple, they're not stone. They give a message. They all teach you art of living. They're like, somebody, if I put down 20 items, that's how, the Quran says 20 items, and somebody creates a picture of that. So just looking at the picture, you can see how we should live our life to be successful, to be happy. And universal teachings. This was if we look at these pictures, they all explain the art of living.
You said mufti?
Huh?
You said mufti.
No, we call them murtis, and you call them idols, IDOL. But in these are not gods. The point I'm making is they are not gods. They are symbols, and there is a lot to learn from those symbols.
Even Hinduism, you refer to what?
Sorry?
Even Hinduism, they refer to
Well, I was joking with one lady. She says, when God is everywhere, why do you say, why do you point a finger up there?
He's up there.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
But it's interesting to know more about it, because we people don't market. Like Islam and Christianity has spent billions of dollars going all over the world, trying to convert people all over the world. We don't convert.
That's good, alhamdulillah. So we're going to go ahead and end real quick right now. Hopefully now. I'm glad, thank you. Take a round of applause, that's nice, thank you. So typically as we end, we usually have a short and small prayer, and I have been formally, taught, or at least I have visualized and watched many individuals make very great prayers when it comes to interfaith gatherings, and so I will do my very, very best. And so we ask our Creator, the one who created all of us, whatever name that we call him by, to bless this gathering and to bless all of us that have attended this evening. We ask the one who created us and the one who bestows his mercy on us to allow us to arrive home safely and to allow us to increase our knowledge and increase in peace that we have between each and every one of us. Thank you. So I appreciate all of you guys attending tonight. God bless all of you and have a great night.